Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Unfortunately today I'm not going to be doing just a regular episode because like many other people out there, I woke up to a tragedy unfolding. There has been another mass killing in San Jose, California. Now, this couldn't have happened at a worse time. Not that there's ever a good time for something like this to happen. I mean, it's always a tragedy no matter when it happens. Just like it's a tragedy when people die in a car wreck. Anytime there's loss of life, it's a tragedy, period. I'm not going to try to make it into something political or blah, blah, blah. It's a tragedy. I'm going to treat it as such. But it couldn't have happened at a worse time, like I was saying, because right when it happened in Washington, they were debating over whether to appoint the most notoriously anti-Second Amendment person who's ever been appointed to lead the ATF, whether they were to approve his appointment or not. So couldn't have had worse timing, but that's all irrelevant. I'm not worried about the timing. I'm not worried about the politics of it. I just want to deal with the actual event, what we know, and what can be done about these kind of things and what we can learn from them. First off, let's talk about what we know here. This guy was a public employee of the light rail system there in San Jose. If you're not familiar with light rail, that's like the little train system that runs through your town. It's kind of like subways, but above ground. Very big here in Portland, Oregon. So he was an employee there in some type of maintenance or mechanic position. Must have been a pretty decent position though, because he made decent money. His salary plus his overtime last year was over $120,000. $102,000 salary plus $20,000 in overtime, and then probably great benefits on top of that being a city employee. So looks like a guy had a good job. He's 57-year-old white male. And he has murdered 8 people, 9 counting himself because he did end his own life at the end of the attack. So I want to talk about the things we know about what happened, like I said, what lessons can be learned from this, and is there anything we can do to prevent this type of thing? So first off, let's deal with the things we know, like where it happened. San Jose, California. Now I know a lot of people are going to start saying, well, tougher gun laws, especially this jackwad who's nominated to run the ATF will be like, tougher gun laws would have prevented this. Well, California has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. In fact, they're what they want to model the rest of the country after. They always say, oh, those California laws are what we want to make the rest of the country like. So this shows that those gun laws don't work. Because this isn't just a rare event in California. It seems like a good portion of all the mass killings that have involved firearms in the recent past have been in California. So apparently those laws don't do a lot of good. Surprisingly, when someone decides they want to do something that they know is heinous and illegal, the fact that it's illegal doesn't usually stop them. Especially if they know they're going to end their own life at the end. And most of these gunmen, these mass shooting events, they're not very good for, if you want to do it again and again, take a lot of life, because they almost always end with the shooter dead. The shooter ended up, or the murderer, the killer, killed himself at the end. Usually either they do that or they're taken out by police. It's never a repeat offense. Now, if you wanted to do it repeatedly, start bombing malls or something like that, like the Unabomber, that was worse because it was random and it could happen anywhere, stuff like that. So, but like I was saying, the whole point here before I started rambling, the laws aren't stopping it because it's happening in California. So one of the things we can learn is the state with the toughest gun laws in the country still has problems. So maybe gun laws aren't the solution. Another thing we can take from this is, according to statements from people who worked there, it is a no guns workplace. You cannot carry a firearm on the job, which another reason why you're like, wow, how could this possibly happen? The gun laws in California are strict. It's a no firearms workplace. Those rules didn't seem to stop him. Why didn't they stop him? Because once again, it's rules like that are stupid. Gun-free zones, no gun zones, all they do is create victims. One of the reasons he was able to be so successful in such a short period of time here, kill 8 people, and then himself, in a very small window of time, is because he was basically shooting fish in a barrel. Nobody there's armed. He knows that. He walked in wanting to do a heinous thing, knowing, hey, I'm not going to meet any resistance here. So that's another thing we can learn from this. Not only do gun laws not work, they don't stop criminals, but gun-free zones just create victims. They Raise the victim toll every time something like this happens. If you pay attention, these types of shootings usually happen in gun-free zones. It's the norm, not the exception. And when these shootings happen in gun-free zones, they almost never meet any resistance until the event is over. So that's another lesson we can learn. Gun-free zones just create victims. Another thing, as far as like profiling the kind of people who are going to do this kind of thing, it just goes to show you that really doesn't work always. I mean, it is a tool, but this guy, 57-year-old white guy, doesn't seem to be an extremist of anything so far. Doesn't even seem to have a social media presence, from what reports were saying. Hasn't had any past history of extremism or violence or crime. He's got a clean criminal record. Only things on record for him are a divorce 10 years ago, and which I think is kind of far back for them to say, well, that's the reason he got divorced and he went crazy. I think that's a while back for that. And some parking tickets he's had. That's about the only record of him in the criminal system. So that's another thing that leans towards how gun laws don't work, because they usually target people that have criminal backgrounds. We got to go after these people with criminal backgrounds. We got to start making it to where less and less people can have guns if they've got mental health issues or police records or blah, blah, blah. Most shooters don't have any of those things. Whenever someone decides to do something like this, it's usually because they have been a good boy or girl most of their life, usually a boy. Let's be serious here. And he finally got to their breaking point. People that do bad things their whole life are very seldom the people that do these gigantic things, because it's the people who repress it and finally go out in one big blaze of glory that usually do this type of stuff. So right there, another way gun laws don't work. You know, people who don't have criminal records commit a lot of these crimes. Crimes of passion, murdering your family, etc. They're not usually by people that have criminal records. So whenever you hear people talking, gun control advocates saying, we need to keep guns out of just these certain people's hands, well, you have to wonder, well, why are you wanting to keep it out of certain people's hands when it's not those people that do the things you usually like to promote the most? So you got to wonder, why are they wanting to keep guns out of people's hands? Why are they wanting to make it to where, well, if you get a criminal record, you don't have a gun? Because, well, then they can just, anytime they want to trump someone up on a charge, they can get them to plea deal and take their guns away. So just another example of how the gun laws and the profiling, etc., when it comes to this type of thing, doesn't work. Another thing we notice in this event, another thing we can take from this is this thing was right next to the sheriff's office. According to some reports, it's actually attached to the sheriff's office. And according to police, by the time they got there, no gunfire was exchanged. Now, at first they were saying police rushed in while bullets were still flying. But the latest update, they said, is once police responded, it was all quiet and they never responded to an actual shot being fired and they never returned any fire. So it seems like this happened very quickly and was over with. But even though this building was attached to the sheriff's office, didn't seem to save them. Didn't offer them any form of protection. Police didn't protect them. So that's another thing I think you can learn here, that the police aren't going to protect you. Only you can protect you. This place of business, according to the reports from people who worked there, etc., has no security system, really. I watched a reporter ask one of the officials, what type of security did he have to go through to get in there with this firearm? And they're like, well, the building is secure because of its location, because it's right next to the sheriff's building. It's attached to the sheriff's department, and the traffic lights don't even let people come that far unless you're an employee, and the signs say no entry, all stuff that is not security. So basically, this business decided, because of their high ideas, that guns are bad, so we don't want to have guns in our business, and we don't want employees to have guns. But we're not going to take any extra steps to protect them, even though this is a public agency that is often involved in things like this with disgruntled employees, etc. Remember the post office shootings. But we're still not going to take any extra effort. That's another thing that always stands out in these types of events to me. The people that are morally superior to us, who don't believe in guns and violence, they don't do anything to protect their employees. They disarm them, throw them into this public place, disarmed, with a lot of, A lot of people have different feelings about public utilities, public businesses, etc. A lot of employees get disgruntled. A lot of employees get fed up with it. And yet they take no efforts to protect the people there. It's just all about their virtue signaling that guns are bad. And all that's done is cost lives. So I don't see why people still tolerate that. It's just a perfect example of how sitting on your high horse doesn't get anything done. Doesn't protect anybody. Now, the people who make those rules, they don't care because they're not going to be there. So they don't care if they disarm you and make you defenseless because they're not there. It's all about them being able to feel superior. So I really don't like that at all. There's just, like I said, when this happened and every time something like this happens, there's lots of things you can look at and say, hey, this is something we can learn. This is something we can change. But it's never, hey, this guy would have been stopped by this gun law. I can't think of a single gun law that they proposed that would have actually stopped this guy. No criminal record. It wasn't prohibited in any way from owning a gun. We don't know yet even what gun was used at the time I'm filming this. I'm filming this relatively early because my internet takes forever to upload stuff. So we don't know what gun was used. Was it a legal gun, an illegal gun? Was it one of the guns California deems dangerous? Or was it a safe gun according to their really strict standards? But like I say, you almost never see wow, if we'd have just passed this law, this wouldn't have happened. I've never seen that. I've seen cases where, wow, if police would have enforced the law, this might not have happened. Like when someone is adjudicated and then the police go, yeah, we're not going to bother to report it like we're supposed to. Or someone is put on a involuntary medical hold and the police are like, yeah, we're not going to deal with it like we were supposed to. Too much paperwork. Or when they show up at a call where someone should be put on an involuntary hold and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. It's too much trouble. Let's just let them work it out. We've seen instances like that. But as far as, hey, this law would have stopped this, we never see that. And this is the same case. Nothing like that would have stopped anything here. All we see is examples of if you disarm people, you make them potential victims. When you create a workplace where no one there has the means to defend themselves, anyone who walks in with the means of offense has a severe advantage and can do a lot of damage very quickly. You don't see people walk into police departments and shoot up a bunch of police as much as people hate police. There's people out there, nut jobs, that just despise the police with a passion. They're not smart enough to just dislike the system. They actually dislike the people. So they go, you don't see them going in and shooting up a police department because they know they might get one or two and then they're going to be filled with holes. You don't see people commit mass shootings at gun ranges because they get filled with holes. It just doesn't happen because people like this that want to do as much damage as possible to make themselves infamous or to work out a grudge, which just seems like this is probably a grudge. Either he had a personal grudge against other employees, against his company, or maybe he just lost his marbles, one or the other. When people go to work out these things, they don't go to places where they know they're going to meet resistance. They plan it to where I'm not going to meet any resistance and I'm going to go out on my terms. Sometimes they even think I might even get away because there's no one there to stop me. But no laws would stop them, and these gun-free zones, all that does is give them more victims that they can count on having when they get where they're going. It's how they choose where they're going to be. Another thing, like I said, that's very obvious from this is police aren't going to save you. Police were right next door. Didn't save a person. Maybe them showing up caused him to say, okay, I'm done now, and off himself when he heard the sirens or saw the police cars pull up or whatever. So they may have limited the damages by arriving on time, but didn't stop the tragedy. So that's another lesson right there that I think we learn every time. Police are not going to protect you. So don't count on that. That's not what they're there for. That's not even really their job. Their job is to enforce the law after someone breaks the law, not to go out and preemptively police or protect you as an individual. Even they themselves have gone out of their way to make sure that the courts know that's not our job, and the courts have agreed with them. So, like I said, these are tragedies. Now, first off, I want everyone still to keep this in perspective. This was an isolated event at a specific location because of one deranged person's beef or issues or instability, whatever. This isn't a rash of violence that's throwing off the curve of now everyone's dying by guns. No, it's just something that happens. It's one of the ill effects of gun-free zones and poor mental health and everything else. It's not like 9/11. It's nothing like that. It is a tragedy, but like so is if a van wrecks and kills 7 or 8 people. We had a bus wreck not too long ago, killed 30 people. That's way more than this, but you didn't see a national outcry of what we need to do about bus safety because people are just like, these things happen. Maybe we should make sure buses are safe, but there's already laws that say that, so we don't need to do anything else. But somehow when it's guns, even though it's less people, they have a different perspective on what we need to do. So like I said, I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but I do want to say it is a tragedy, and it is an ill-timed tragedy. And I also wanted to point out that there are, like I said, the whole point of this rambling all over the place video, which it wouldn't be one of my videos if it wasn't rambling and all over the place, is that the things we can learn from this and the things we can take forward from this are that gun laws are ineffective. Gun-free zones, all they do is up the body count and make people defenseless. They create victims. And police aren't going to save you even if they're right next door.